time. My name's Adam. I'm in recovery. I'm 11 years sober today. And with that, I pass. No, I'm just kidding. I appreciate everybody being, I mean, at the end of the day, you don't have to be here, right? Like, you could make the choice and say, fuck it. And, I mean, obviously, there's new people here tonight. There's people that have said fuck it in the last couple weeks that are not here, and it's kind of, I have a couple guys in my life that I've been mentoring for a while, and they, they're right at the same spot I was between 2000 and 2013, where I didn't stay sober for longer than 60 days, 90 days. I was just constantly going to detox or treatment centers or homeless shelters or whatever, anything other than what I really wanted to do, which was I just wanted to be, I've been a dad since 99, but I haven't really been a present, father until I got sober in 2013. And by that time I had two boys, and I was in the process of, I lost my ability to see my second kid in 2012 or whatever. So, when things happened for me, like what it was like is that I couldn't stay sober. I was getting locked up all the time. I was catching felonies, and I went to court, and I got sentenced to go to Teen Challenge. And I stayed sober. It was the first time ever that I stayed sober for a long period of time, which was like 14 months. And so I thought when I got out of there, like I was good. And I, thinking about any time I ever went to treatment, or I always came out of there thinking I'm good. Like I'm going to stay sober. I had like this unusual confidence or whatever. And I think after I left there and I came back to Fargo, I lasted 1 week. And I got this job at a tech firm, and it was nothing special. It was it was a cold calling job. Like it wasn't like I was working at a tech firm. I basically just got a phone and a computer, and I made cold calls to set up appointments for somebody else to go and do sales. And I was there for a week, and then they had the company Christmas party, and I went to, it was at Courtney's Comedy Club or whatever, I think, and so I went there, and I was like, I'm sober. My boss even knew I was sober. Like I told people that I was sober, and I sat next to a guy and his wife, and she was drinking Estella's, and the only thought I had was, I've never had one of those. That was it. That's all it took, was I've never had one of those. And I ordered one, and I was like, for the next year, drunk every day. And I guess what happened for me was I was pretty much like, I wasn't showering anymore. I had a different job. It was like on my third job in that year. I wasn't shaving. I don't even think I owned deodorant anymore. Like I was just a wreck. My all self-esteem went out the window. I'd go to work, and I would wear like dress clothes to work at this, I'm doing the actual the sales now, where I was doing the cold calls before. And so I'm going to try and close deals, not closing any deals. And I'd go to work, and I was this smelly guy at work. And it's really if you're in a warehouse or you're in the shop or something like that, you can cover it up with gas or, whatever. But in a cubicle or a cube farm, people can smell you on the other side of the building, because it's just the ventilation, whatever, it doesn't matter. And people were I just got uncomfortable around me because I was the smelly guy. I wasn't closing any deals. It was very uncomfortable. And I was kind of turning antisocial. And then one day I was in the break room, and I found the hard liquor in the cabinet. And I remember I asked the sales guy, I was like, what's that all about? And they're like, oh, that's stuff we've just accumulated from Christmas parties and stuff. I was like, so nobody drinks it? They're like, no, it just sits up there. I was like, cool. And then after he walked away, I put one in my bag. And then for like the next like 2 weeks, I put a liter every day in there. And then they figured it out. And plus I wasn't selling anything. They fired me. And so then I went home to this apartment I was squatting in that I found on Craigslist. And the people I was like living with or whatever had left, and they were the ones on the lease. And then 3 days later, there was an eviction notice because they found out because I was like throwing beer bottles off the balcony and pissing off the balcony and stuff. Like I was not a good neighbor. And so I had 3 days to leave the property, and I had nobody. Like I couldn't talk to my kids, and the only way I could see them was on Facebook. And if I even liked a photo, she would block me. Like it was just super toxic. And it's just a wreck. And so anyways, this guy, he was like my last friend, and he invited me to come over for drinks. And I was like, I needed it. I had no money. I lost my job. I was being evicted. Like I just needed a couple, And so he was like, yeah, you can come on over. And I was like, well, where do you live? And I was like by the Bowler in South Fargo, and he lived by Tasty Freeze, which is not very good in the news right now, by the way. I don't know if you read about Tasty Freeze, but they are on the chopping block. Anyways, I walked all the way there. It took me 2.5 hours to walk to his house. And not once did I ever think, like, this is too far. This is ridiculous. Why am I going? All I could think of is, like, I cannot wait to get drunk. Like, that was it. Like, I was super motivated. Made it all the way there and knocked on the door. He lets me in. We get drunk. He passed out. And I was really worried that I was not going to have more alcohol. And so I robbed him, right? It was like my last friend. Invited me over, gave me alcohol, hung out with me, was super nice, whatever kind. And all I could think of is that I'm going to wake up tomorrow without alcohol. And so I took his alcohol, I took his money. I even tried to get into his bank accounts and shit through his phone and stuff. Like I was just a really shitty guy to him. And I went home and walked up, took a taxi home actually, and got back to the house and went in and drank, got drunk, passed out. And the next day I hear boom, 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 boom. And I thought it was like day 3 of the eviction. So I thought it was the cops. And I go and I look through the peephole. I can't see anybody. I open up the door and it's my friend. He puts a gun to my head. And he's like, give me my shit. And I was like, hey, it's cool, man. Like, it's right over here. I got your bag. Right? And we walk over, I grab his bag, I see the bottle of alcohol, and it's behind the chair, and I hand him the bag, and I do not hand him the alcohol, right? And he searches through there, he's like, you stole a shirt? I was just grabbing shit, bro. And then there was a little bit of money in there, and he's like, where's the alcohol? And I was like, I didn't take any alcohol. I was like, isn't that crazy that I was like, he could have just shot me right there or whatever over a bottle of alcohol, and I was just like cool with it because I was more worried about not having it than I was about my own life. It's just crazy. Looking back at it, I was like, in the moment it made sense. And so anyways, he left, and that was the last time that I got drunk. And the next day I woke up and I just had this urge to just want to. It was the same urge that I've had 1,000 times before. And I think that I'm pretty sure that if I would have taken a lie detector test all those times that I wanted to get sober, it would have said I was telling the truth. And this time wasn't really any different. I really wanted to be sober. And so I walked down to a payphone, and I called this guy named Andre. And I was just like, listen, I did not have a good reputation in AA. I was chronic slipper, slept around, was just a piece of shit. And Andre was very familiar with who I was. And so when I called him, I was just like, listen, I know you've heard this before. honest, I don't even know if I'm going to stay sober, but if I don't try right now, I don't know if I ever will. Like, and if you're willing to help me, I'm willing to try. I'll do whatever you tell me to do. I'll stay away from women. I'll get a job. I'll get a sponsor. I'll do whatever. And he's like, yeah, you can come over. You can come over to my place. I was like, cool. Will you come pick me up? And he was like, no. And I thought at the time, I was like, it's kind of a dick move to just be like, I'll help you, but I'm not going to come get you. Fast forward to his life or whatever. He didn't have a license or a car at the time, but I didn't know that because he was 10 years sober. You should have that shit by then, And so I was like, all right, where do you live? And again, I'm by the Boulder. He lives by the airport or whatever, like not far, actually far from here. He's almost in the Ridge. And I was like, my first thought was like, that's a little far. Right? Not even thinking about how far I walked for alcohol the night before. And it's like the same distance almost. And so, and I was just like trying to talk myself out of it. And then I just said, like, we have these little moments or whatever where this like little voice happens. I think everybody has it. And it was like, it's a shitty little voice. It's like, why don't you put as much effort into your recovery or an ounce of effort into your recovery as you do into drinking and see what happens. And I don't know, it's just like a moment for me that I never really put 100% into anything other than drinking and doing dope. Nothing. Like even at work, like I always found time to like fuck off, or when I'm like being with my kids or whatever, like I'm not 100% present all the time. And so it was just like, it really just kind of like made me think about how much effort I put into things. And when it came to my recovery, I always just did stuff that was convenient. Conveniently go to this meeting because I don't got shit going on. Get a sponsor because he just happened to be there at that time, right? Go to this conference because I don't have anything going on over the weekend. Like it was always convenient stuff. And so it was never really a lot of effort. And so like when I was like confronted with actually putting in some work for, my recovery, I was just like, I'm good, and had the walk not happened, that 2.5 hour walk, I don't know if I would have correlated the two worlds at that moment. And so I was like, all right, I'm on my way. And I walked there, and it took 2.5 hours to walk to his place. And, fast forward through all the crazy shit that happened in my first year of recovery, like it was it was seconds and inches of going a different way. And I really think it was like there was, one of the things that I did one of the times that when I was going to meetings and I relapsed is I got drunk and then I broke into a guy's shop and I stole all his shit. Well, that guy who owns that business went to the same meeting as I went to. And so and there was a bunch of guys that worked at that place that also went to the meeting. And so when I went back to the meeting, it was very uncomfortable. My ex was there, or my baby mama, was there. My old boss that I just robbed and all the people that worked for him were there. And I vowed when I got sober, I was like, I'm definitely not going back to that fucking meeting. But then Andre was like, well, you have to go to the meeting if you want a place to stay. And I was like, this is some bullshit, man. Like, nobody made you go to a meeting that you wronged everyone. Your ex is there and all this stuff. And he's like, well, I mean, you can go find somewhere else to stay if you want. And so I went to the meeting and, I think, honestly, if they would have busted my balls or made fun of me or made me feel weird or guilty or anything like that, I would have just left. And when I got there, this guy, Jeff, who I robbed, walked up to me and he gave me a hug and he told me it was good to see me. And then those other guys came up to me and gave me a hug. And then she came up to me and said, she was crying and she was just happy that I was sober. And it was just weird, seconds and inches. She could have just came in there what the fuck are you doing here? Or they could have been like, you robbed me, man. They could have said anything else other than I'm glad you're here. And so it was very supportive and helpful in that first year with them, being that way. So I'm not saying that I think I've dealt with more depression in recovery than I did when I was using. It has been 11 years. It has been a struggle, right? And so like when we were talking earlier about how we respond, you know, like tons of stuff has happened over the last 11 years that, you know, even Jason said it earlier, where I used to drink over smaller shit, right? And my depression, or things not going the way that I thought they were going to go, or, you know, my head getting the best of me with that negative mindset or whatever, like all that stuff is just like, honestly, I think it just came at me tenfold after I got sober. And so, and then I just realized, I was like, I never really had a problem getting sober. It was actually a lot of shit I went through was very motivating to get me sober. I don't want to live this way anymore. The road, right, is hard. And I mean, there's been times where I've like didn't leave my house for 3 days in recovery because I was scared of what I was going to do, or the suicidal ideation that, you know, Derek was talking about earlier. Thought about suicide more in the last year than I have in my entire sobriety. It just comes in waves, right? And so the only thing, like, you know, Cody said earlier or whatever, is like, I'm sober. Like some days that's what I feel like all I have is that I'm sober, you know? And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have the people around me that, you know, sometimes I feel like they don't really even care about me, you know, because my head gets the best of me. And I get into this false reality that of they don't care about me, they're taking advantage of me, they just want me for my money, they just want me for my attention or whatever, right? Like whatever the case may be. And 9 out of 10 times it's not even real, or I've made it bigger than it actually is. And so now I'm to the point where I'm just like, first thought wrong, right? Call someone that you can talk to and just process it, you know. When we mentioned earlier, like tonight's house meeting was like the most vulnerable that I've ever seen it. I really do believe that that's the first step to real recovery. It's just being vulnerable, like even as men and women too, right? But just getting it out and talking to somebody. They don't even have to be a mentor or a sponsor. They could just be a friend, you know. But talk to somebody and get the help that you really need for that internal stuff. So anyways, I'm super grateful. I'm glad you guys are here. There's no real motive to the meeting other than it's just a place where we can come together and just be vulnerable and talk about our shit, and hopefully some connections happen and we can rely on one another and have some accountability to each other and live better lives than we were before. I wouldn't even say better lives, just living the lives that we want to live rather than what we were doing before. And that includes me. Like, I hope my year this year is better. I have better behavior than I did in the last year, like, and the year before and all that stuff. And so, I don't know. I'm just really grateful to be here, and I'm grateful to see you guys, and I'm glad that you guys are sober and doing the deal. So that's all I got.